Good afternoon, everybody, and you're very welcome to Radio Centre Ireland's second webinar of 2024. I would like to introduce Jason Brownlee, founder of Colourtext, a company that specializes in research for media platforms, and I'll be hearing from Jason very shortly. Today, we're going to introduce a new piece of research, and it builds on research we completed in 2023, which is all around the area of really trying to provide comprehensive data to advertisers and agencies on the effectiveness of audio campaigns. People will know with digital campaigns, the ability to deliver lots of metrics that provide response data for clients on campaigns. I think everybody on the webinar will know that doesn't paint the complete picture, because often there is loads of influences that affect a person that eventually can, take an action which delivers a digital footprint, but lots of elements go into that equation. It was quite interesting. The webinar we ran in early February, we had System 1 presenting, and System 1 were talking about the power of audio in building long-term brand effects, building mental availability over the long term, priming interest for future behavior, for future demand, so that people are in market, they then go and purchase. So it's really a powerful way of looking at how advertising works in both the long and the short term. So really what this research, what we're trying to do is this research commitment is going beyond outputs such as GRPs or reach or frequency or impressions, and go to outcomes being how we can change purchase behavior. So I'm going to share our presentation now, and lucky enough for everybody, this will only take about 35 minutes. There is a Q&A button in the bottom of the screen. So please use the Q&A button, and you can ask any questions that you want at any. Apologies. So, as I said, that's what the research is about: is providing comprehensive data on the ability of audio campaigns to deliver for brands. And I suppose the platform that is the audience, and the audience for audio is actually at an all-time high. So 3.4 million adults are listening to live radio every week. It's a phenomenal number, and it's the biggest number for many, many years. That means 92% of adults are listening to live radio every week, 88% of the younger 50 to 34 cohort, and 98% of adults are listening to some form of audio content every week. And then you look at total audio, that's all forms of audio, be it podcasting, streaming, even owned music such as vinyl or downloads. Live radio takes 74% share of total audience listening. So you have a vast audience there, but the question is how those radio campaigns, how the brands use that audience and connect with that audience through audio to deliver future purchase behavior and affect future purchase behavior. And I think, as everybody will know, that there's essentially two ways that advertising works. You have the short term and you have the long term. So the short term is looking at bottom of the funnel informations to nudge a purchase now because somebody's in market right now to purchase, and you're aligning those people that are in market right now, and you're looking for a short-term sales lift. There's also long-term brand building, which is more top of the funnel. You're emotional priming someone to behave in the future. So you're building strong mental availability about a brand. You are looking at all potential buyers in the category, and you're really trying to generate future demand. Somebody may not be in market right now. When they're in the market in the future, they remember your brand, and then go and search and potentially make a purchase decision. So in 2023, we first actually looked at short-term sales activation. And with a piece of research, again, we partnered with Jason's company, Colourtext, to do this. And that particular piece of research, we partnered also with Sky. They gave access to their analytics. And it was a very specific campaign. It was a TV and broadband deal-based campaign, which was real action-oriented. There was a specific offer. People could go to a campaign landing page and purchase that offer or find out more about it. So what we were able to do was to match the radio activity with the website traffic activity. And that chart in front of you shows that. So the gray lines are the radio activity, the gray bars, and the blue lines are the website visits. And as you can see, just visually, there is an immediate fit. So as the gray bars goes up with radio activity, the blue lines go up with website traffic. As the gray bars go down, also do visits to the website. So you can see an immediate kind of visual fit. What we were able to do with that research is move it to a 3-day moving average. And you can see an almost perfect fit, one line versus the other line. So the orange line in this case is looking at the daily radio ratings, and the blue line is looking at the organic and paid search referrals into that campaign landing page. And there is almost a complete fit. So again, very much able to predict radio activity in terms of driving volume to that campaign campaign landing page of the website. And color text through techniques such as regression analysis, we're able to put an actual number on that. And through regression analysis, able to show that 72% of the increases in traffic to the Sky campaign landing page were predicted directly by the level of daily radio ratings. And what it also showed that the response rates, rather than being immediate, because radio is a passive medium, somebody could be driving, cooking, whatever, the responses tend to happen over a 24 or 72-hour period. So this piece of research was about that short-term activation. Is radio strong at delivering short-term activation? And very powerful results. So that piece of research shown it is hugely effective at doing that. What we're looking at today then is the more upper funnel metrics, that long-term brand building, that emotional priming I've just talked about, to deliver strong impact on mental availability and harvest future demand. And in order to do this, we are launching today Campaign Effects, which is designed exactly to do that, designed to look at the effects of radio on more long-term measures, such as brand awareness, brand consideration, advertising. And now I'm going to hand over to Jason, who's going to talk through the detail and the design of the research. Thanks, Jason.
Thank you very much, Kieran. We are just going to see if I can control the screen. It works. That's fabulous. Well, thank you for your introduction, Kieran. It's great to be with everybody today. It's now gone 12. It's no longer the morning, so happy lunchtime. This is very exciting because we're building something for the Irish market, which is developed from a vast amount of experience that we've gained over the last 15 to 20 years in other markets, principally the UK market, where in partnership with the Radio Centre in London, I developed with them a project called Radio Gauge, which some people may have heard about, given it's been around for rather a long time now. We launched it in 2007, and since that time, it's oh, we've lost my slide. Yeah, still there, Kieran. Now there we go. And since that time, we've now undertaken and completed over 1,000 radio advertising evaluation tests. To the best of our knowledge, Radio Gauge in the UK happens to be the world's largest database of audio advertising effectiveness. So we're very proud of that, and we've learned a great deal from it. And it's from that heritage and that experience bank that we're developing something which is bespoke to the particularities of the market here in Ireland. To explain what we're going to be measuring and why, we should probably begin with this chart. Now, I think it's important to contextualize this in the market situation we currently find ourselves in, which is a market that's becoming increasingly dominated by online digital platforms that generate vast amounts of market response data. Any traditional media platform operating in that environment is naturally expected to provide some kind of feedback on its own effectiveness performance characteristics. And it's sad that, to a degree, radio hasn't really been able to do that, at least not sufficiently, and certainly not as far as its ambitions have stretched here in Ireland. And this is what we're trying to address. And we're going to do that by looking at the way that advertising generates its brand impact across both the long term and the short term. So thinking about the long term first, advertising generally, and radio advertising as part of that, plays a key role in creating future demand. People who never thought about buying an air fryer, apparently we all need to buy one of those soon, but without advertising, I probably wouldn't be aware of one. It wouldn't even be within my wish list of kitchen products. So advertising can play a role of creating future demand, making people aware of products or opportunities that they previously were not aware of. And on Radio Gauge, and now on Campaign FX, we will use questions, upper funnel metrics, as we call them, such as brand awareness, brand relevance, and brand trust, to measure the degree to which radio advertising in particular is having an impact on those future demand characteristics of audience perception and audience desire and aspiration. And here's the first chart with stats for you to consider. This is taken from all of the work that we have done on Radio Gauge. 2 years ago, I was invited by the Radio Centre in London to aggregate all of the data that we'd collected over that 15-year period with Radio Gauge into what we would call a meta-analysis. All of the data from over 1,000 studies aggregated into a single database and then analysed as part of a meta-analysis to give us average performance across all of the campaigns that we have data for on specific metrics. And here we have advertising awareness. The question is very simple. Have you seen or heard any advertising for this brand recently? And when we look at the responses to this question for people who have been exposed to radio versus people who have not been exposed to radio, the first group, the radio exposed group, or the test group, as we often call them, show a 49% uplift for advertising awareness. Now, just to clarify what advertising awareness means, this isn't just about your awareness of a radio campaign that a brand may have done. This is about the general level awareness that you may have of everything a brand might be doing across all platforms at any point in time. And so what we find is that people exposed to radio have a higher sense of awareness about any marketing activity that brands are doing. And that's really interesting. And we'll talk more about that in a moment. But there are other key metrics that we see significant uplifts for amongst people exposed to radio advertising. So for instance, brand relevance is an important metric. And here we see a 24% uplift amongst radio exposed people when asked the question, is this a brand for people like you? And brand trust, I think most people on the call would agree that brand trust is a really important metric for many, many brands. And this is a brand I trust is a common question and an important one that many brands want to perform well on. And here we see again, people exposed to radio advertising show a 32% uplift in agreement on this question. So very significant results. What we also want to look at are the more concrete, shorter term responses to advertising that could be measured in several ways. For instance, we can look at brand consideration, but we can also look at direct response metrics as well. So for instance, in terms of brand consideration, here you can see we've got 828 campaigns that we have this data for in the Big Audio Datamine data set. And amongst people exposed to radio, brand consideration uplifts are on average 18% higher than people not exposed to radio advertising. And in a more concrete sense, radio seems to have a very profound relationship with online behavior. So for instance, radio's relationship with search behavior is fascinating. Here with the big audio data mine, we can see from average across 291 campaigns that we have data for, the number of people who say they have searched online for a brand's details, that we see an uplift of 21% agreement with that statement amongst people exposed to radio advertising. Similarly, we see a 19% uplift amongst radio exposed people for accessing a brand's website. So that's very often going direct to source, and for D2C brands, that's an incredibly important metric. So this is what we are bringing to Ireland, but we have to tailor make the methodology and structure the project to fit the particularities of the Irish market, which differs from the UK and other markets where we operate, like Canada, for instance, in several important respects. The first respect, of course, is size. The population of the UK is very big relative to the Irish population, at least 10 times larger. The import of that in a research sense is that it's much easier to find large numbers of online research panelists to take part in your survey. Now, in the UK, the average number of people that we interview for each research wave is 800. And Kieran and I are pleased to report that here in the Irish Republic, we're getting an average of 750 respondents for each survey that we conduct. So it's almost the same, which is very gratifying. So that's a relief in many respects, that we can do continuous research at a high level of sample. The other consideration in terms of structure is that in Ireland, we look at the Irish radio market with envy from the UK, insofar as it's possible to reach 80% of your audience with a campaign, with a national campaign, in about a week. In the UK, I'm afraid that's simply impossible. Now, that's marvelous if you're an advertiser. From a research point of view, it does cause some challenges for the test and control group methodology that we use for Radio Gauge and now for Campaign FX. To clarify what this means, the test group are the people in the market that have been exposed to everything that a brand is doing across all channels, including radio. The control group are the people that will not have had any exposure or a reduced exposure to radio activity, and therefore the campaign effects are expected to be less. Okay. Now, in the Irish market, it's harder to find people who have not been exposed to any radio at all because of the performance, basically, of the medium. So we had to develop a new solution to building our control group versus our test group, which we've tested and we now operate very satisfactorily. In Ireland, the control group comprises of the very lightest listeners in the market, which also will include non-listeners. And this contrasts with the test group, which is the very heaviest listeners, which of course will also include regular listeners too. And when you compare the campaign takeouts of these two groups, there is clear blue water between them, which is very satisfactory. So we've actually made huge progress so far. We've already undertaken surveys which have collected data on 31 individual brands across 5 different product categories. And we've done this in a relatively short time. So in September, we started with banking, and we moved on in October to TV streaming. In November, we researched fast food and delivery services. And then in January of this year, we moved on to general insurance, followed in February by health insurance. That's quite a lump of data. And Kieran and I are taking a break on the data collection part of this project because we have more than enough for now. And the next phase of our project will be to focus on the meta-analysis of all of this data. But for now, I think it's important that we take a look at what we're learning from each of the campaign studies that we've done. So this is the first data from Campaign FX that you're seeing right here on the screen now. And it's for the personal banking category, undertaken in September of last year. And this first question is brand awareness. Which of the following banks are you aware of? Now, you'll notice at the bottom of the screen that we're using brand A, brand B, and brand C. We've hidden the identities of the actual brands that this data is for. This is because we simply haven't yet had time to meet these individual brands and to debrief them individually on their campaign results. And this is something that Kieran will be returning to after I've completed this data part of the presentation. But if you can just stick with us for now with the brand A versus brand B way of looking at things, you can see here we've got a classic ranked picture of the key players within a category in a market. And we know from our experience with Radio Gauge that these awareness figures and how they rank brands in the marketplace very often follow quite closely the relative market share position of each brand as well. So brand A, brand B, brand C will be very familiar to all of you on this call. But as I say, we'll be able to reveal more individually to the agencies and their brands in due course. Let's take a closer look at more of the detail to drill in on what the relative performance of these campaigns or these brands have been relative to each other. And we'll begin with advertising awareness. Again, now, as I said before, advertising awareness is a really interesting metric. From the Big Audio Data Mine study, we discovered that it's the one metric which is the most sensitive to radio effect, radio advertising impact that we have. So it's always really important to take a look at how advertising awareness is changing for brands that are advertising. And what you're seeing here on this chart, if I might explain it, is quite interesting. The purple bars are the test group. These are the people that have been exposed to radio advertising, and the control group are the orange bars. And in each case, you can see that there has been an uplift amongst the test group. And we thought that was interesting and we wanted to explain it. And so we wanted to take a look at whether these brands were all active at the same time. And going to the Nielsen ad spend data, I can confirm that all of these brands were on air spending and investing in radio advertising at the time of this research study. And again, just to, reiterate this importance of advertising awareness, it's an important metric for radio because in every study that has been done, not just in Ireland, but in the UK and across the world, the effect of the radio multiplier effect is something that we see in every marketplace that we do research. This is where radio is supercharging or sensitizing consumers to everything that a brand is doing across all channels. And in some instances, in the old days, it was called the TV multiplier effect. These days, it's now also being called the online multiplier effect. Radio keeps showing this ability to sensitize consumers to a whole range of other activity that brands are doing. And we wanted to see just how deeply we could understand this here with campaign effects. And so what I've overlaid here on the chart, which we were just looking at, is the uplift rates that we've got for the main three contenders in this market, brands A, B, and C. All of them are posting a significant uplift rate amongst people exposed to radio, but it's brand B that has the most interesting and significant uplift rate. In fact, brand B's uplift rate amongst people exposed to radio is double at least that of its two main contenders. And the reason for that wasn't difficult to find when we looked at the Nielsen ad spend data, which I'm now putting on screen. At the time of this research, At the time that this uplift rate for advertising awareness was measured, brand B had the highest share of voice on radio in the Irish market. So we're already finding a very interesting and significant correlation between share of voice and uplift rates in key metrics like advertising awareness. And that obviously is something we wanted to dig further into. So what we've done here is just looking at brands A, B, and C together. Other questions such as, which banks here do you feel have done a lot of advertising recently? So this is a perception now. This is a perception question around what's your perception of the level of activity that this brand is engaged in. The people that are exposed to radio advertising have nearly 3 times the uplift for this question. They are way more likely to think a brand is active in a market if they're exposed to radio advertising. And we see a similar effect with another question, which is around creative standout. So looking at the uplift rate for creative standout and comparing the 3 brands, the question is, what banks here make adverts that really stand out? The brand with the highest share of voice on radio has the highest uplift rate. In fact, its uplift rate is nearly double that of the other 2 brands. And we would say this is probably due to its share of voice leadership at the time that the research was undertaken. But this is the financial sector. This is banking, and trust is a really key metric in this category. And so when we look at this question, which of these banks is a brand you trust? Again, we see a 77% differential in the uplift rate between brand B with the highest share of voice on radio and its 2 major competitors. This means people who have been exposed to radio are far more likely to agree or trust the brand with the highest share of voice on radio, which is a remarkable thing to discover. Now, some people might say, well, those are great. Those are upper funnel awareness metrics, and they're about the long term. What about the short term? Well, let's take a look at this. This is the data again for brand B with the highest share of voice. And we looked at these 2 questions. Have you used an app or visited the website for any of the banks here in this list in the past 4 weeks? People exposed to radio advertising were 19.4% more likely to say brand B was a website or an app they'd visited or used, which I think is significant. But it's even more remarkable for search-based behavior. Have you searched online for information about any of these banks in the past 4 weeks? The people exposed to radio are more than double the likelihood to choose brand B as a brand that they've been searching for online in the last 4 weeks. That's a remarkable statistic. So to finish this part of the research data, we're also doing something which is unique to Campaign FX in the Irish market. And indeed, we're not doing this to the same degree in any other market at all. We're incorporating into the Campaign FX methodology Professor Byron Sharp and Dr. Jenny Romaniak's category entry point analysis from the Ehrenberg Bass Institute, which is studying the degree to which brands are gaining mental availability share around key use cases for consumers when they're thinking about engaging in a particular category. And here for banking, we've got 7 or 8, I think we've got 8 statements here that people will be considering when thinking about relationships with an existing bank brand or a prospective new banking brand. And what this is showing us is that relative to the other brands in the market, brand B has made quite significant progress on ramping up perceptions of it being the brand for easy mobile banking and checking balances and payments in a very stress-free and self-serve kind of manner. I haven't actually listened to the creative for Brand B that may have been on air at the time the research was undertaken, but I would be surprised to find it if it didn't mention something around that kind of category entry point or user use case, as we see here from this data. So this is what we're already doing and have already done. Our intention next is to begin aggregating all of the data from those 31 brands from the 5 different studies, and begin to build an infrastructure of meta-analysis which we can dip into and learn from on an ongoing basis, and over time build that to make it a world enviable database of audio effectiveness information. But the next stage, I think, is to bring this to the individual brand so they can be thinking harder about how they use radio and optimize their current use of radio to improve their return on investment from the medium. And with that, I'm going to hand back over to Kieran to tell you more about where we go next.
Many thanks, Jason. And yes, just to summarize, I think the real passion and objective of Radio Centre Ireland is to bring a huge amount of comprehensive data that really shows the impact of audio on consumer behavior. And I think the examples that Jason just talked you through do exactly that. And just to remind the stat that Jason talked through, we have data on 31 brands across 5 product categories. So we already have a huge amount of data built up over the past few months. What we will be doing later in the year is compiling all that data together, analyzing it, and delivering some meta data trends about the impact of all of those 31 brands and aggregating insights around them. But before we do that, what we're going to do is talk about those individual brands and the insights from those individual brands in terms of the measurement of their individual campaigns. We're going to be talking with the agencies and the relevant brand owners over the next few weeks. So as I said, a huge amount of data, 31 brands. Jason went through the finance category there. We had anonymized all the brands because the results haven't been shown to those individual brand owners or agencies yet, but just to show what data we have. So within the personal banking category, we have the main players. So we've data on AIB, Bank of Ireland, EBS, Permanent TSB, and others. We have a huge amount of data in this TV streaming category for the likes of big players like Sky, Now TV, Virgin Media, and Disney. Again, looking at the fast food and delivery category, huge brands like McDonald's, Domino's Pizza, Burger King. Again, we have the results of the activity that they had when they are active on radio and comparing gap control and test to see the impact of radio at the time they were active. Again, in the general insurance, all the main players within general insurance, as you see on screen, and in terms of health insurance, again, all the players. So 31 brands over 5 categories. And then the plan is over the next few weeks, Radio Centre Ireland is going to go out and meet individual brand owners and individual agencies and go through the details of the research in terms of upper funnel brand metrics, such as brand awareness, advertising awareness, and brand consideration, and the category entry points analysis that Jason just talked you through for the finance category. So again, it's the commitment from Radio Centre Ireland to bring to agencies and advertisers comprehensive data on the effectiveness of campaigns across a wide range of brands and product categories. And delighted, this is day 1 of campaign effects. We've just shown you a snippet of some of the data we have. I will be visiting many agencies and brand owners over the next few weeks. And as I said, later on in the year, we come back again to produce some meta analysis based on all the 31 brands that we have surveyed. So many thanks for the presentation, for your time this afternoon. And I said it'd be short, and it is. It's only 25 to 1. So we're giving you some time back, but I'm going to unshare the screen now and see if anybody has any questions that they want to pop into the Q&A button. Please, if there's any questions that you have for either Jason or myself, please ask them now, and we can answer them. If you have any questions on the methodology or any other specific questions on the data that you saw. Just no questions there at the moment. I'll just wait another minute or so, and if there isn't any questions, we'll be able to give you about 20 minutes of your day back. So let me just check. Just one question for me, Jason, is how different were the results in Ireland compared to, obviously, the UK is a slightly different research methodology, and it's worked over 15 years. But is there any differences you saw, even looking at the initial results from Ireland compared to the UK?
Well, I would say in broad terms, what you expect radio to do and to do well, we are seeing that in the Irish market. There's you know, there are general kind of effects that we see in every market that we work in, and radio is not performing unusually in those sorts of respects. The level of awareness is usually much higher, and ad recall, for instance, is much higher in the Irish market than it is in the UK, and that's a function of reach, I think. The UK commercial radio industry doesn't reach anything like 80 to 100% of its market, principally because of the BBC. But that kind of recalibration of expectations due to the audience ability to reach all of the audience here in Ireland is something that I'm getting used to. Actually, it's nice to see.
Okay, a couple of questions. The first of which I can actually answer is, what are the future categories you have in plan to do research for? We don't have any specifically at the moment because we've so much data across the 5 categories. The plan currently is to just socialize that data and to present that data to the relevant people. We are looking at some other methodologies in terms of how we will go back to market, go back in market and add different categories and different brands. But we will come back to that later on over the next couple of months. In the meantime, we're just stopping for the moment just on those 5 categories because we've so much data, to socialize and to present, and also to do some of the meta-analysis on that. But there will be other opportunities to go to market with other categories and brands, but it will be a little bit later in the year. And just another question here. For the 4 main banking brands you showed in the research piece, what type of ad frequency were they applying, and how many stations on average were they advertising across? Any insight appreciated. And don't have the real nitty gritty on that at the moment. It was a heavy month when every single brand was active in September. And we do have the share of voice data, so some brands were more active than others. Don't at the moment have the detail, getting into the very specific detail of activity by station or activity by ad frequency, except to say the weights are quite high. So there would have been, you know, a high reach, high frequency campaign, certainly across brands A, B, and C. That's the only data I have at the moment. When being presented at an individual brand level, we'll be able to provide some more detail on that. I'm just checking if there's any more questions. I'll just give it another minute or so, and if not, we will just wrap up. So as I said, Radio Centre Ireland will be out to relevant agencies and brand owners over the next few weeks, presenting the relevant brands to the relevant agencies and the relevant brand owners. And we will be back later on the year with a meta-analysis, and also there will be a follow-up on other brands and other categories that will be going to field with later on the year. Will you share the deck? Yes, the deck will be shared with everybody who registered, plus a recording of the webinar, and also both the recording and the deck will be on the website over the next day or so. So hopefully you'll have a chance to either relook at the deck, record or watch the webinar, or indeed share it with colleagues, more colleagues too. So many thanks, everybody. Really appreciate your time, and we'll see you very soon. Thanks again. Thank you. Goodbye.